What's going on, guys? How are y'all doing? Today we're going to be looking into some recent evidence that's been brought up. Allegations about crimes committed by a company that we are all familiar with, especially over here in America. Yeah, that one. The Shell gas station's logo is not the first thing most of us think about when we think of crimes against humanity. A case straight out of the 90s, with Shell's alleged complicity in a series of horrific crimes in Nigeria, like burning down villages and torturing citizens of this area. Some real cruel stuff. Man, these corps really use Africa as a battleground when you look at it. We really be having no idea what really goes on over there. But with this investigation that came forward recently, it's time to grab the popcorn because this is definitely gonna be a long one. So, my name's Michael. Thanks for coming today, guys. And let's get started. Now, imagine a continent so rich in natural resources that it could power the entire world. Well, as of 2019, the Democratic Republic of Congo produced 63% of the world's cobalt. Rwanda and the DRC together produced about half of the world's tantalum. And we don't even have to mention the oil supplies from there. Africa has reserves that includes up to 90% of the world's chromium and platinum. And let's not forget about its significant contribution to the global cocoa supply. With over 70% of every chocolate and cocoa used globally being extracted from Africa. Yeah, every Kit Kat and Hershey that you snack on is probably from there. See, this is the stuff we don't normally think or talk about. Like, who's making this stuff? And how are we getting it so cheap? Well, it's not hard to guess. We all grew up knowing about sweatshops, work camps with child labor, the things that make our items cheap. You got old ladies stitching Nikes for 8 cents a day and greedy corps benefiting directly from it. But sometimes these companies go way too far to secure their bag, if you know what I mean. Especially when it comes to one of the lifelines of our modern society: oil. Now, picture this. In the 1990s, in Nigeria, you have Shell, the Anglo-Dutch oil giant, and they were operating in the oil-rich Ogoniland region. But apparently, behind the scenes, Shell wasn't just drilling for oil like their company's actually known for. Oh no. They were allegedly wrapped up in a whole lot of dirty deeds that were done dirt cheap by the Nigerian military. Amnesty International recently dropped a bombshell report, revealing thousands of pages of internal company documents and witness statements. The evidence points to Shell's complicity in some truly horrific shit: unlawful killings, rape, torture, and the burning of villages. Some real evil corporate shit we see all the times in movies, like burning down villages so you can run your pipelines through them. So let's set the scene. There are protests going on in Ogoniland, and they were spearheaded by Mossab, the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people. These folks were fed up to their socks with Shell's oil spills that turned their rivers into slicks and their fields into wastelands. The pollution was off the charts. Fish dead, crops dying, and people getting sick. So, in January 1993, Mossab declared that Shell was no longer welcome in Ogoniland, effectively forcing the company to temporarily shut down its operations. But Shell wasn't having that. They wasn't about to pack up and leave without a fight. They got way too much money for that. But before this, let's rewind a bit. On October 29th, 1990, Shell requested security protection from an elite paramilitary police unit called the Mobile Police at its facility in Umekum village. These guys weren't your regular ass beat cops. They were known and damn near famous for their brutal tactics. What went down at Umekum village was nothing short of a massacre. Peaceful protests were met with brutal force, guns, grenades, and an assault that left at least 80 people dead. The Mobile Police didn't stop there either. They torched 595 houses, turning the village into a smoldering ruin. Bodies were just dumped in nearby rivers like yesterday's trash. It was a scene straight out of a war zone. And the worst part? Shell executives knew the risk, but kept ringing up the military anyways, like they were ordering takeout. Shell's internal documents from this period are like a smoking gun. They show that Shell's executives were in constant communication with senior Nigerian government security officials, lobbying and practically begging for military support. Even after mass killings, Shell provided logistical and financial assistance to military personnel over in Nigeria. Typical corrupt situation. Got the huge corp coming in to pay whoever's in charge to look the other way and do everything in their power to increase sales and cut expenses. As long as the Nigerian military get a cut, they have no problem unloading on their own people, huh? You gotta be missing something in your head to have so little empathy, especially towards your own people. But the general in charge is a savage. I don't know what tribe he crawled out from, but he was on demon time. This leader, the man with the plan, was General Sani Abacha, the head of the Nigerian military government. And like we suspected, savage might be a compliment for this dude. He was often associated with the severe human rights abuses that occurred during this period, particularly in Ogoniland. Abacha's regime was marked by widespread repression, and his military was heavily involved in violent crackdowns on peaceful protests against oil companies like Shell. So with the general being the de facto leader of Nigeria from 1993 until his death until 1998, his government was responsible for numerous human rights violations, like slaying villagers for complaining about his lucrative money well, and especially the horrible yet significant execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the other Ogoni 9, as well as the military's violent suppression of the Ogoni protests, which is something we'll definitely get to later, on how significant the execution of Ken was. It set the stage for things to come. And under General Abacha's rule, the Nigerian military and security forces were frequently used to protect their oil daddies' interests, often at the expense of the local communities. For example, one chilling document revealed payments made out to a special unit just 10 days after they had shot unarmed protesters outside of Shell's regional headquarters in Port Harcourt. This is like paying off the neighborhood bully to rough up the kids who don't like you, or in this case, shoot the shit out of them. Oh, and it gets worse. On April 30th, 1993, Shell asked the Nigerian government to deploy the army to Ogoniland to protect a new pipeline. This led to the shooting of 11 people at Biara village and the killing of a man at Nanwa village on May 4th. Yo, can you believe that? Shell just kept having cozy meetings with senior government and security officials, pushing for more protection, while people were just getting mowed down left and right. And a lot of the times they were cut down for just protesting. Folks, if this ain't crimes against humanity, man, I don't know what is. And why does this state that Shell wasn't just throwing money around to get shit done? They weren't just sitting back and watching. They allegedly played an active role. On several occasions, they transported armed forces to break up protests, knowing full well what the consequences would be. Villages were attacked, homes were burned, and people were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. This wasn't just enabling. This was facilitating this horror show. The fact that this is still an ongoing investigation, an ongoing case, that haven't found any executives of Shell charged with this crime is a joke. It's even stated that in his final words, Ken Saro-Wiwa warned that Shell will face its day in court right before he was executed. Which brings us to one of the most tragic yet significant events in this story. Ken Saro-Wiwa was a writer and activist who led the Ogoni protest. On April 30th, 1994, Brian Anderson, Shell's chairperson in Nigeria, had a meeting with General Sani Abacha. Anderson raised the problem of the Ogonis and Ken Saro-Wiwa, describing the economic consequences of Mossop's opposition. And lo and behold, A little while afterwards, Ken and 8 other Ogoni leaders were arrested, tortured, and executed after a shit show of a trial in November of 1995. This was like a scene out of a bad gangster movie, but with real blood and real people. Oil and oil money is literally something these corporations will start a world war over. There's no doubt about it in my mind. The execution sparked a global outcry, but Shell just kept on pushing. Internal memos reveal that Shell's directors in The Hague and London were fully aware of what was happening in Nigeria. One memo shows directors approving a detailed strategy for how to respond to criticism after the Ogoni protests. Amnesty International's report, titled "A Criminal Enterprise?", makes a compelling case for Shell's criminal liability. They're calling for investigations in Nigeria, the UK, and the Netherlands. Audrey Gargan, Director of Global Issues and Research at Amnesty International, emphasizes the need for justice. She says, "The evidence shows that Shell repeatedly encouraged the Nigerian military to deal with community protest, even when it knew the horrors this would lead to." In June 2017, the widows of 4 of the Ogoni 9 filed a lawsuit in the Netherlands against Shell, accusing the company of complicity in the wrongful arrest, torture, and executions of their husbands. Shell, of course, denied the allegations, sticking to their story of innocence. Like back in 2009, Shell agreed to a $15.5 million settlement in the United States to resolve a lawsuit without admitting liability. This settlement provided some compensation to the families of the Ogoni 9, but did not result in a legal determination of Shell's guilt. It was like throwing a few bucks at a problem, just to try to make it go away. Well, hopefully this one won't go away. Not this time. Despite these settlements, there's been no criminal conviction against Shell or its executives related to these allegations. Amnesty International and other human rights organizations continue to push for justice, advocating for criminal investigations and greater corporate accountability. And of course, Shell, being a corp, has always denied these allegations, claiming they believe in dialogue over violence and that they would never pay a militia to silence protesters. But the evidence suggests a different story, a story of them being all in when it came to these crimes, being involved in brutal crackdowns on the Ogoni people. But no one at Shell was found legally accountable, and no one was charged. And like I said earlier, in his final words, Ken Saro-Wiwa warned that Shell will face its day in court, and Amnesty International is determined to make this happen. Justice has to be served for Ken and the thousands of others whose lives were devastated because of Shell and the Nigerian military. If you found this coverage to be something you like, hit that button for me, share this video, and subscribe for more deep dives into the dark truths that shape the world we live in. So, my name's Michael. Thanks for joining me again today, guys. And remember, everybody, be safe.